kick off though.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna go with Fred. Fred's got a demo, I think, surrounding routing. Is that right?
Yeah, I haven't really shared this with anyone yet, but
Okay.
it's a cool new feature for routing that I wanted to show off.
All right, go for it.
All right, cool. Let me share my screen. Get the whole screen going. Entire screen, live chat. Cool.
Okay.
All right. Look at that. Tech working as it's supposed to be. Cool. So yeah, I wanted to show off a couple of things around routing. I'll start this off with we have been, really trying to keep this idea of you have your source pages directory. It's a one-to-one map with your site. Everything's kind of, you put a markdown file, you put an Astro file, it ends up rendering as the page. So like file-based routing kind of at its core. We also introduced this idea of collections. So we tried to take a different stance on dynamic routes because we're a static site builder, wanted to maybe reserve that for later on down the road when we added dynamic routes. And so we created this idea called collections, which you can kind of see on the doc site if you haven't already. Basically a way to use one page to generate multiple, like pagination, many authors, many Pokemon. We use that example a lot, all from the same template. So a lot like, a dynamic route. It's responding to multiple requests, but in the world of a static site. The problem was that that's just like a lot more boilerplate, and we've improved this over time, but at the end of the day, we're doing a lot of routing setup here. We're creating paths, we're creating prompts, we're passing data. And I was kind of the main proponent of staying away from file-based routing, like true file-based routing like Next.js or SvelteKit has. Too early, too soon to kind of go to that. I was worried we might do it wrong or we might not get it right so early in the project. But now that the project's settled a bit, I was excited to take another look at this. So I have been working on a demo and a proof of concept of true file-based routing. Essentially what you use in SvelteKit or Next.js, where you actually define your paths and like what the dynamic params are in your URL, just based on the file path alone. So no more of this kind of like boilerplate setup of what are your routes, what are your paths, what are your props. Combining that all into a much simpler interface, more similar to like get static paths in Next.js. So I'm excited to show that off today and demo what that looks like because it's really clean compared to what we used to have, and I'm really happy with it. Again, the caveat of this is an experiment. This hasn't gone through the RFC process. This was mainly me proof of concepting whether it would work or not, and it went well enough that I was essentially able to build a demo before hitting any significant roadblocks. I'm going to use a couple of demos here to show this. So we have this blog multiple authors template, which is our best example for using these collections today. So you can see the site here, loads up. Drew designed this. It's basically like a bunch of Don Quixote chapters, but presented as a blog, so you can kind of. One sec. Classic.
There's a bug.
That's a bug, I think. So at least I know the fix is there. You can go by author though, so you can see all the things by Don Quixote. You can see all the posts by Sancho, and then I'll post if I just fix this bug really quickly. This is one of those kind of hacky. There we go. Oh, that should be working. I don't know why it's not. Let's try that again. Okay, I won't be able to show that one off. But the rest of it's all working because the code for this is really interesting. So if we go into examples, we go to blog multiple authors. Normally this would be like a file that started with a $sign. It was just kind of custom syntax. But you'll see now here that we just have a more traditional kind of authors and posts to the two dynamic pages authors and posts, I should say. And they're now using the Next.js style actual file name, treating, basically telling our compiler what the params are. So you can see here an author, and I'll close this for a second. Close it, nothing big, there we go. That create collections API has now been replaced by a get static paths one. And this is now all the API you need, where essentially you are just mapping over this data that you've collected, iterating over it, and creating a params object. There's also an idea of passing props. So if you want to pass some data out of this, right, you just fetched a big collection. You don't want to do that multiple times for each page. You can just pass it down as a prop. We support both. The param for author is going to become the URL. The prop is going to become the data. And you're then able to load those in the template. So a lot of this comes from this push that we made, like kind of recently. We really committed to this idea of every page run being individual. Like essentially, you hit this component, and this component script runs for every page. It's scoped to the page itself, so multiple pages will run this code multiple times. And that gives us the freedom to basically put anything that we want to have be shared in this one function, and now we're passing it as props. So you're kind of guaranteed that it's going to be unique for every run. Again, this is the one I can't show off because of that weird bug. It's still demo code. This one's a bit more fun though because it's A, working, but B, it's using pagination. So we still have this goal for the project of having really simple pagination. And we wanted to keep that in this API. So collections, one of my favorite things about it is pagination is essentially a function call. We've kept that here. So you do have to add a page variable, basically saying like this is going to be the page param. We use ... because that makes it optional. Again, demo, proof of concept code here. But as long as your file has the same, it's going to basically automatically hook up pagination for you. So for this demo, we're showing pagination of page size 1. This is the one that isn't working for some reason, which is very frustrating. I think it's this for some reason. Oh, this is why Void. What is that? Aha. Got it. Oh, this will work now. Because I really want to show you all pagination. It's really cool. So again, all you had to do is basically, instead of returning your params that you created yourself, this paginate function is essentially just a helper which creates the multiple routes for you. So this function tells you what pages you want to generate. Paginate's going to do that automatically with a page size of 1 post for every page. If we load this up again, go to all posts. Ah, dang.
Did you build?
I really thought that was it. No, I changed the actual thing here. Oh, well.
Oh, okay.
It's really cool when it's working. It was just working a second. I don't know why. It's a real shame. Maybe I'm passing the wrong. Let me try one more thing. This is, you can tell, this is just like total stitched together code to get this demo working. This was all working the other night, and then oh, look at that. Okay, so pretend there's no duct tape there, but basically with you just calling a paginate helper function, we give you automatic pagination here. So all the same kind of properties and metadata about what the next URL, the previous URL, that's all being generated for you automatically using this API. So what I love about this, it's all the convenience of collections that we used to have with the kind of much less boilerplate. It's built in the file path. There's like all this complexity that was hanging out in what a collection was that we're now essentially just treating as a way to tell Astro what paths to render, and then letting the page itself do the rest. So a lot more logic moved into the page, which is a pattern we really want to do more of. I will show the kind of coolest thing, because this is a little bit, like I mentioned, that this is kind of a little bit out there in terms of we need to talk about this as a team, make sure it's what we want to do. Check out the docs project. So one thing we've been having a lot of open questions about is like, what do we do with our current idea of layouts? So right now, you might have, if you've done anything at scale with Astro, you might have noticed, oh, for every markdown file, you need to basically in the front matter set a layout. That's the content of the markdown file is going to go in one place, and then the layout property basically points to a file that's going to be the whole page, the skeleton for it. What's interesting about that is it's kind of like, it's a little bit of, okay, I have to copy paste this layout thing into everything. We've talked about having a default layout. There's this whole idea of a markdown file being an Astro, like a page, like pages / and then putting your markdown files in there, which is great for, having that be a representation of your project. One thing that this opens the door for, though, is, and I'll open this up here. We go into the docs project. Traditionally, all of your posts, right, so I mentioned lived in the pages directory, and a markdown file equals a route. What I've done here for this demo is really simplified that pages to now it's just essentially the home page and then your content. Your content becomes a dynamic route. It's an Astro file, so now we're in a world where only Astro files live in your pages directory. And what this is doing is that it's generating a page for every post. So we've moved the posts out into here. These are all the same pages if you've seen our doc site. This is the content, right? And we're fetching it, and we're essentially creating a dynamic route that for every post, create a page. So instead of having to set a layout in any of these, we've now essentially moved that template into the sources directory, into the page. We've got some nice components. We've got all this. And essentially, we're just, instead of some sort of slot, we're just basically saying, all right, put the page content here. So this is a very different model. It's nice in a lot of ways, right? Your pages directory is now only Astro files. It's definitely different in that now what happens if you move the content out? Where should it live? We need patterns for that. I really like this, but I do want to be conscious that this is a change of how we do things. But essentially, every page still works. You have a really clear template that's in the pages directory, and that's just a really clear one-to-one loading content from a post directory. So it really simplifies that idea of your markdown has to double as both UI and content. The markdown can now just be the content, and the UI has been moved into the dynamic route, basically. So this is not possible today in Astro. I'm really excited about it. I think this is a nice step towards dynamic routing, which is something that we want to get to. We're constantly looking for ways to take steps while we really nail down the static site generator, which is what Astro is at its core. Dynamic routes is definitely something we're excited about. So this is really interesting because it's a step towards that. You can totally imagine how this opens the door for a true actual runtime that instead of building anything ahead of time, you can kind of opt in at a page level for a server runtime. So that's not at all what this is doing, but this is definitely a step in that direction. It makes that one step closer to a reality. So this is going to be pushed up into a PR, into an RSC. Definitely want to go through the process, but I was really excited as I was testing this, just how well it all came together. Based on the refactoring of the past collections API, it really opened the door for this to not be a huge lift internally. So keep an eye out for that RFC, but that's my demo.
Awesome. Very cool. Awesome. All right. Yeah. I guess let's do some questions. Since I'm the MC, I guess I can go first. Yeah, I liked a lot of this. I'm curious. So that last part you're talking about, where you moved your markdown instead of being pages, it's more like you said, it's content in your demo. And that's really enabled by these changes that you've made, enabling get static paths. But you could still do it the old way, right? Like, you're really not preventing markdown from being a page in this case. Is that right?
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, this is not so far said like that's not allowed. The whole old system still works.
Yeah. Okay.
This is more just another option that maybe for V1 we want to talk about locking down to one or the other, but for right now that all works.
Cool. Okay. My other question. This file has file in the file name. Is that file, that the word file, can that be anything? Can I name that something else? And where do you use that file? Is that used somewhere?
Yeah, great call out. I did just kind of jump into this demo assuming everyone was familiar with Next.js routes. That's, I'm sure, not the case. The idea here is that, and the other example shows that off well. I can give a quick kind of breeze through it. The way this works is that if you put brackets around anything in this path, it is a param. So you can imagine this route basically is /authors/anything. And that param ends up inside of this object. So author is a map one-to-one of this. And when we're creating static paths, all we're doing is basically saying, give me all the possible author params that I might build for. So Don Quixote, Sancho Panza, any name here becomes the author param. ... is a little more complex, but it's basically saying this is going to be so flexible. I don't actually want to parse this via our path parser. Anything that comes after this is a valid route for this template. So /post/anything. That lets you do an optional variable. That lets you do a bunch of other stuff. To bring that back to the docs example, which is right here. File is just the param name. So you can see we are basically setting for every post, give me back that path name. So for everything in the post directory, I want to create route, /examples, /getting started. We could rename that to, post path. And then basically just find and replace the word here, post path. It basically becomes this param that you're going to get inside of here. And if you rebuild it, again, I might have broken it, but okay. The basic concept there is that becomes a param in your route that you just have to handle, and then it gets sent to your template.
Okay, so it gets put on astro.request.params.
Yeah, and your job here in get static paths is essentially just to create an array of params,
Right.
objects that give you what you need to generate that route.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, those are my questions. If there's anyone in the audience that has a question about this idea, please speak up.
I think people are posting in chat. No,
Oh.
I muted everyone by default. I was a little worried
Oh.
about the size of the room.
Oh, I didn't think that
If
was
you check out
working.
the chat, I'm sure there's people talking.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do that. That is, which room is that? That's the event room, right? Nope, it's not the event room. It's in. Oh, that one. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Okay. Yes, we do have some questions. Wow, where to start? People like it. This is cool. Lots of this is cool. Looking for a question mark. What about multiple
John
params?
Neal.
Is that a thing? Is there a multiple params?
Yeah, so we actually borrow. I should give some shout outs where they're credit where it's due. We are borrowing from the SvelteKit parser here. We're basically reusing their logic. Our compiler is built on Svelte. There's a real connection, or sorry, it was originally based on Svelte. There's a real connection to some of their internal logic that we're building on top of. So that was part of what made this so easy to scale out as a demo. They do a couple of cool things. So one, you can do something like lang dash, version, let's say, and put this even in a folder. So what this is doing is basically saying, hey, there are two different variables here that we're gonna parse. All right, so it's not just a one-to-one. It's actually, you can have as many as you want within a route. So this would be en for English dash v1 for version 1.
Oh, interesting.
Or that could be one, and you can nest them, so a folder name is still valid. They did a lot of cool stuff to support that we are definitely able to stand on the shoulder of giants here and reuse ourselves.
Okay, yeah.
But that's an advanced use case, a much more common one, which I haven't thought of a reason to use that. Something like this would be very common, right? You actually want the language as something parsed out as a param. So you can do that as a variable name in the folder itself.
Well, someone asked about the previous thing as you were talking about it, so that people are aware of this and are definitely interested in these advanced use cases.
Awesome.
Caleb had a question, and Caleb asked, "How does this work with Markdown components?"
So I don't know if we have the idea of a Markdown component, like a component being powered by Markdown. But this does open the door for us to think of Markdown more as something that gets loaded. So, instead of being the page itself, it becomes this thing that, like, here we call fetch content. You can imagine a world where, since this whole page is what's getting rendered, somehow maybe in here saying like import, /post/ getting started. I am not saying that's a good idea. I don't know what would happen there. But it definitely opens the door to thinking of the Markdown as the thing that the template is consuming and not the template itself, which is one of, I think, conceptually the things I really like about this.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. TBD on that.
Yeah. Again, the whole demo is experimental, and then within the demo, this is like even more of an experiment. This is not implemented. I don't even know what happens if you do that.
Yeah,
I hope it errors at this point.
Caleb's really asking about components in Markdown. Like, let's say we had an MDC.
Oh, in Markdown. Gotcha.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think he said it the other way, but yeah, if we had that, if you had an MDC file in your content, like, what would that do? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it just depends. I mean, right now we're playing around with this idea of we're putting it in as a string. Again, maybe there's a world where that is already rendered out because it's all static, or maybe there's a world where that becomes more of a component. So again, the result here is like, more like content.
Interesting, yeah.
That was loaded from a Markdown file. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, these are interesting questions. Price rate.
So I expect a lot of this to get ironed out in the RFC process. But these are all great questions, 100%.
Yeah, I think we have. Do we have a couple more minutes for questions? We have a few. Um, Bryce Ray asks, global supported in pagination as well? Not sure
Let me.
what they mean by that. Could you show off just for my own sake what pagination looks like? I know you're calling that function. Does that give you some variables on props? That gives you page on the props? Is that what that gives you?
Yeah, so what I really like about this is that it's essentially a helper. There's actually our old paginate function actually was really tied into the compiler almost. Like what happens when this gets called? Maybe not the compiler, but like the runtime. It was really tied into. What's nice about this is it's essentially paginate is just a way to automatically create an array of params equals. It's essentially just creating an array, and each page is given, or the page is thought of as the actual page. So if this was page size 1 or 2 or 3. You can see here that it has some properties off of it. URL gives you what's the next page, what's the previous page. Data is where the actual array of posts goes. So we're adding the pagination of these posts. Data is where they live for any one page. Some of this it's basically just our existing pagination API. So what I like about this is it doesn't change that, but it really simplifies the whole story of how pagination works.
Gotcha.
At least internally.
All right, I think
I don't want to go any deeper because I think it's just going to be more details than the code is willing to kind of show off at this point, given how still experimental the code is.
All right, one more. Okikio asks, does dynamic paths replace default layouts for Markdown? Which
Yeah, so that's where this gets really interesting, and that's where I think this becomes a better. I mean, this is again personal opinion. I like this solution better. Or the idea where the feature request there was, is there some way to define a default layout? So maybe in my config or maybe in my directory of the markdown files, like I have a file that says, dot layout, or there's a lot of different ways that we could get a default that you didn't have to put it in the front matter of every single markdown page. I kind of like this a bit better. Thinking if I really want a default layout, more the layout itself is the page. And then it's just loading the content. So we take layout logic out of the markdown file itself, because the markdown file doesn't have like really a lot of ways to express itself. It's essentially a static YAML front matter. So this would be a solution to that, where if you needed a default layout, this would be saying just use this pattern instead. Again, something to be kind of committed to, but that's the idea that it kind of takes and runs with. This would be our solution to default layouts, by having a default template that generates many static paths for every file. That becomes your default layout.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll have to think about that. Part of me disagrees in that if you're making like a non-blog, like if I just want to have an about page for my company or something like that, like I think of that as just like its own page. I don't think of that as like one of many pages, even though it does use the default layout. It's kind of a different way to think.
Yeah,
So
and I
yeah.
think that's what I like about this. We're saying that a markdown file can still live here, and it can still say layout equals what we do today, which is I think dot slash layout slash main.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying that this would possibly replace that.
No, it would just replace this thing that's a missing feature today. It would basically be the answer to it, which is a default layout. So if I have 100 markdown files
Gotcha. Okay.
and I don't want to put layout in every one of them, how do I
Yeah.
do that? This would be the answer to that.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. All right. Yeah. Someone asked
Anyway,
about
I
OAuth,
saw.
but I don't think that's really.
Yeah, I want to move on to Nate's. Nate's is way more fun.
Yeah.
But I will say I saw John Neal ask when will this be available. The next step is to get this into a PR, fix the bugs that are known. RSS support is notably still missing, which is one of those things we have baked in that we really want to keep. But once those things are done, hopefully this week, getting that into an next release that people can install themselves, while this goes through the issue process, RC process, PR process. Giving people, given that we have a proof of concept, we should share it and let people kind of get feedback that way. So keep an eye out this week. Definitely something that's on my plate to get done and get in.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. People asked about more dynamic things. I think you've already said that this is more of a step towards like a dynamic server runtime. This is not fully there, so there's a lot of things to answer to kind of finish, to finish that part out. So, all right. Well,
Question,
thanks.
please reach out in the dynamic routing Discord channel. I'll be there
Oh
the
yeah,
rest of the day. I'm happy to answer questions.
yeah. I'll send people there. All right, Nate. Oh, Caleb's already on
Yeah.
top of it. Yeah. So Nate's got a demo about a new compiler apparently. Um, so that's great. If you wanna share, there you are. Take it
Yeah.
away, Nate.
Awesome. So there's kind of two things to demo here. I want to make sure. Can everyone see the REPL on my screen here?
It hasn't opened yet for me.
It's still loading on mine.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me.
Yep. Still loading is what everybody seems to say. Might. Yep. There you go. Undo it and do it again.
I'm in a cabin with questionable internet, so whenever I see it still loading, I assume it's me.
I think several people are seeing that. Okay. Let's see.
Yeah.
Come on. They do have a good loading animation. I'll give them that.
I am sure we are testing like the limits of Discord video streaming. I think when I started there were maybe like 10 or 20 people, and now I'm like scrolling
Oh
through the
my.
list. This is really cool to see. Really appreciate you all joining in.
All right. Nate's gonna try again. Third time's a charm. I think it's gonna work.
I just like picturing a team of like DevOps engineers or SREs at Discord being like, "What's going on in this channel
as well?
What are these people doing?"
I wonder if it's because I'm running.
Yeah, Nate, you might want to. Oh, there you go.
Hey.
There we go. Okay, yeah, we can see a REPL.
Is that working now?
Here's-
Okay, great.
here's good.
Yeah, I was running QuickTime, and apparently Discord does not like that. All right, cool. So we have this REPL here. I know that is not the compiler, but it is a really great way to demo what this new compiler does. So right now, our compiler is pretty tied into a Snowpack plugin and a lot of resolving files and things like that. So one of the goals here was kind of decoupling like what a .astro file is from Snowpack. And if we are thinking about a .astro file, in our heads it's an HTML file with some like server-side setup. So what I did is I went and forked the official Go HTML compiler and added support for all the stuff that makes Astro awesome. And this is the new compiler. So it's running with WebAssembly in the browser. I also got it working in Node, but just want to show off here. So it's so fast that you can just do like live REPLs like this. So yeah, that was like 16 milliseconds. Let me just to uppercase. So if touching these compiled in times, it's about like 10 milliseconds per thing. So that's all pretty cool. What's also really cool is, let's see, before I get into like what this view is here, I'll just show you what the compiler is actually doing, which is generating this JavaScript function that can render out the page, basically. So I know we're all about like Astro is minimal on JS, but we do have server-side JavaScript. So this all runs on the server. And this is similar to what's happening right now. Items, and we'll just go like 0, 1, 2, and then, you know, I can map over items map. I'll just say div with the item here. Right, so we're just, that JavaScript is just getting inlined here, and we're getting out all of the and this is the representation. So it goes to this JavaScript function, which is the intermediate representation, and then we get out this HTML. So this is just the rendered piece. What's really cool is that HTML is a really resilient language. So, you know, as you kind of screw stuff up, it's pretty self-healing, and that's built into the parser. So let me like close the UL. So we're doing some of this right now, but if I have like a list that's not closed, per the spec, HTML should actually close that, because we encountered, like, you know, this is in the scope of a UL. We should actually close this. So what's cool is this Astro file gets parsed to a full HTML document first. That's spec compliant. And then we render it out to this. So, you know, it's really fast, and it's about as self-healing as you can get, because it's all spec compliant with our additional expression support. What else did I want to show here? An empty file is how the HTML parser would interpret this. It actually has a head and a body. If I throw a title in here, you know, that should probably be in the head. And then like main would go in the body. So that's all handled for you. And let's see, styles are a thing. Style. So Astro has this awesome scoping mechanism, and let me just refresh this. So Astro has this great scoping mechanism, and if we do that in here, we even have support for that. So you can see I'm getting this class before I have the style. There's no class. Then as soon as I add a style, we're going to start scoping it. And this is based on a hash of the file contents. So, you know, H1, we're going to just make this red. So everything is scoped. There's obviously, this is just a demo. There's more to do there. But that's pretty exciting. And there's also full support for, right now, we kind of, components up here are like JSX. Test. So if you can see as I'm typing here, you know, we're getting this full Astro VDOM output up in the front matter. So if I render this out, Astro has like an intermediate representation of a component. We pass it through that, and then pass the component and all the props down to it. So that's very similar to how this is working today. I obviously don't have everything implemented, all the renderers and stuff, but this is kind of the first step towards that. You can see this component gets wrapped in this Astro root. And so here we're getting pretty slow. We're up into like 30 milliseconds. And I think a lot of that is due to the style parsing, which is a separate step, but definitely something I'd like to prioritize and get that down. So yeah, that's most of my demo. If people have questions, I would love to answer them.
Yeah, this is really cool. I love it. As one of the um strange people that likes to write their HTML without the head and body elements, I love that you got that in. um,
Mhm.
our parser does some of that. I don't know how completely it does, but I know it does close elements for you and stuff like that. But yeah, it's
Yep.
really cool to start off with an HTML parser like you did, because then that that thing is trying to be as spec compliant as possible. So it's a
Yep.
great way to go about it. Yeah, I guess I have some questions. We're gonna we're gonna get to everyone else's questions. But my one is just about this display here. Like it's not showing the import statements. Do you not have those, or are you just like omitting those from this?
Great question. Um, yeah, there's a couple things. Fred asked to see lists, so I just want to make sure we get that. So, um, yeah, what is happening with the import? So this is an in-browser REPL. So I don't have like any components or things here, but these are, if I were to import like a component from, I don't know, like uh, cdn.skypack.dev, wink, wink, um, that gets hoisted out, and this is basically what's happening today.
Oh yeah, but
That we're hoisting these out.
so if you use that
Um,
component, sorry.
it would technically work. Um, use the MS package. That's a great idea. So MS. So yeah, if we do like time equals MS, I think it's just default 1000, and console.log our time here. Yeah, we get 1 second in our console. So that's actually running and pulling in the import and everything. Yeah, components aren't hooked up because I don't have the renderers.
Okay, yeah, I saw
Let's
that
see.
you were compiling to the Astro component thing. I just didn't see an import for the Astro component, so that's just something that you haven't implemented,
That's
right?
the question. Yes,
Yeah.
that's just yeah, I just put it on global disk for now
Okay.
because yep.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. But yeah, now I guess
Um,
I didn't see that question, but apparently you can import from URLs as well, which is I don't think you
yeah,
could do that currently.
no, you can't. So the big thing here is that this is decoupled. So we're just compiling this
Right.
Astro file to JavaScript that can run anywhere. So, in theory, this could run in the browser as it is right now, in Deno, possibly, things like that. So this really becomes like you write whatever is here, and then all we're doing is this JavaScript. Yeah, I saw a question there of like, if this is written in Go, why generate JavaScript? Um, so that's a great question. Our templating is based on JavaScript. So, we're doing this items.map, and we have this front matter. We really do need to run that JavaScript somewhere. So that's not very different than any other language like Svelte. But I don't know of another language that's using a Go-based compiler to do that. There's also a question of, yeah, what JS features does this support? So we're not actually down leveling anything at the moment. I did, what would be an example of that? I
So
can't
I'm sorry,
even.
I didn't see. Let me. Could you mind if I ask the question? What I just want to reiterate so people
Sorry, you're
listening.
right.
No, it's fine.
Yes,
What's the
please
question?
MC, Matthew.
No, it's okay.
Um,
What's the question? I didn't get it.
it was like, what are we doing with JavaScript? Like, are we down leveling anything? Is this running ES build?
Okay,
Um,
gotcha.
So like TypeScript, are we
Right.
doing anything with that? The answer right now is no. So if I did like thing is like a string,
Okay.
I'm just gonna get this out. But that's actually, I think, a good thing, because what this means is you can run this through any secondary pipeline, which would give us like, in Deno, that would be totally valid to run this. So, we're not going to give this to you raw. This obviously needs to be built into the build. Like Astro still has a build tool chain and all that. But the compiler itself is not worried about down leveling anything.
Oh, interesting. It doesn't throw on this as well. It's not trying to. Yeah, I guess because it's not really parsing that. I mean, it does when. Yeah, I guess it does when you actually run it in the REPL, but the compiler itself doesn't care about that. Makes sense.
Yep, it's just handling this kind of thing and basically whatever you throw at it.
Yeah, cool. So Okiko asked about what's the memory usage like. I guess they had seen. I guess when they had played around with ESBuild, WASM, and seen a lot of memory usage. Have you noticed anything about that?
Yeah, that's great. So ESBuild, if you haven't looked at the code, Evan is doing a lot of stuff for making ESBuild run on every platform. So
Yeah.
Go's WASM support is not the best, but we're actually using a tiny Go.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So this is a much more efficient WASM target for Go.
I think ESBuild can't use TinyGo. They use some features that TinyGo doesn't support. But yeah, if you're able to use that, then that's pretty great.
Right. And this is also like pretty simple compilation. We're transforming this to JS. So, and then not touching most of this.
Yeah, what I really like about this personally, I mean, just aside from how fast it is and all that stuff, is really decoupling the compiler from Astro internals. Like whether we went with a Go-based compiler or not, that's something we do need to do because this will make it easier for people want to put this into like Code Sandbox and other types of environments that want to do their own compilation. Like if we have our own Astro compiler outside of Astro, that's really going to enable a lot of people to do that kind of thing. So this is really cool.
Yep.
Let's see what other questions we got. Which file formats does this parse? Are there file format parsers internal? I'm not sure what John means by that. Oh, I guess this doesn't work with like a markdown probably, right? Yet?
Definitely not yet.
Yeah.
So it just works with .astro files at the moment.
Yeah, .astro files can have markdown, so that's kind of an interesting thing, It's like what do we do about that? What would be interesting?
Yes. So Markdown, this is a very fun fact, that Markdown is actually tied into our compiler, but that actually causes a lot of bugs. So we've been talking about moving that back to the runtime. So if you have, like import Markdown from Astro/components, and then you were to do Markdown hello world, that would basically this would run the Markdown component itself would be responsible for built-in here.
Right. Yep. Okay. Let's see what else we got. People are mostly just people loving it. Yeah. What kind of files can it already read? HTML, YAML, JS. I think this mostly just. I think the answer, John, is that. Sorry, John is asking about file formats that this compiles, but it's really compiles that Astro.
It does do that. It does handle style, and I'm kind of working on, I'd like to build that in more efficiently, and also script. We can look at that. But right now, none of that's built in. But it would be those two mainly. Style and script to kind of down level those, or Svelte's approach is to pre-process it, so you hand the Svelte compiler valid, JS, and CSS, and then it can run from there.
Cool. Yeah. So people are asking about your SkyPack. So you're not doing anything special to get that to work, right? That's just because you're not messing with the JS part. So if someone uses URL, that's just going through the browser.
Exactly. So this is exactly what's running here. I'm actually using. Wow, do I even have code open? Let's see. We are. Here's this whole REPL. We're building the document from the code mirror source. That is a JavaScript file, which I'm then encoding as a data URI, importing that, and then running render. And that's all the REPL is doing. So this code is actually running in the browser. That's all.
Yeah, which we get the benefit of. The browser understands that. Node would error out saying we don't support importing from remote URLs, at least yet. I know they're working on that. Deno would support this. So I saw, that was mentioned. Like if this was running in Deno, it actually would work like as defined. So there's some interesting stuff there. Maybe we want to turn our import from package into CDN URLs. Maybe we want to, I don't know. There's a lot of cool stuff we could do behind the scenes here at the very least, in this REPL, if this goes public on a website, you just import from the package name and we turn it behind the scenes into a CDN import. That'd be pretty cool.
Yep.
Yeah, you could have a target.
So this just kind of.
Sorry.
Yep. This opens up the possibility of doing all that kind of stuff because we're not in this Astro's tightly coupled to Snowpack world, or trying to resolve any of this. It's pretty simple text transformation.
Yeah, cool. I'm really interested when you get dynamic. I know you said you haven't worked on components because all that's the part that I think touches inside of Snowpack, or it integrates with Snowpack if I remember. Really interested to see what that looks like.
Yeah, we actually did a lot of work to. So there is this. I'll just put this item thing back, and this will just say hey. So if I render this out, this is essentially what's happening today. We wrap this in Astro component, and then at runtime we're figuring out how to render this properly. So that's not very different from anything going on today.
Yeah, and I know if Drew was here, he would say, he's been doing some work to separate Astro from Snowpack, just as a good, for nothing else, a good design principle to keep those layers separate, not kind of commingle that code. So I think there's a really cool idea just kind of going across all these demos, really, of now that we're 2 months into this project, we have a much better understanding of what our limits are, what our different, just what are the boundaries of all these things. And I really like seeing all this refactoring happening to make the code cleaner.
Yeah, Nate, I'm thinking of client, client load. If you use something like that, you know how it generates that inline script, and that inline script uses Snowpack URLs and all that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, that's some kind of integration there, I guess. But
yes, we should definitely discuss that offline.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's you know, I think we're even handling that at runtime right now. You just get client load.
Yeah.
Passed to Astro component, but
yeah.
Yeah, I want to be cautious of, everyone's names. Matthew, as the MC, I want to be conscious of time. I think we're going over a bit on what we'd said.
Oh, we are? Okay. I thought we had another little while. Okay. Let's see if we have any last minute questions. People really like it. Yeah, people are asking, can you use this as a rendering engine? Presumably you could. TBD on that, I guess. But yeah, I mean, people could build their own Astro using that compiler. Sure, why not? Okay. Yeah, this is really cool. So I guess the question is, next steps. Are you gonna create an RFC for this, or what are your plans?
That is a great question. I think we should probably chat about the best path forward internally. Definitely seems like a good road that I want to keep exploring, but I'm not sure if just a straight RFC is the best.
Where can people follow up with you in Discord to chat more about this?
That's a great question. I would love to make a new channel about this new compiler, so we can keep the conversation going.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Okay. Cool. Thanks a lot, Nate. This is really cool.
Yeah, wait, real quick, Nate, Matthew, sorry again to jump in, but it's gotten so many comments and emoji reactions. 30 seconds, why is the compiler written in Go over Rust? Just start a flame war and then leave the chat.
Great idea. No, I think the main thing is, we're looking a lot at ESBuild, and this runs very close to ESBuild. You can actually, in theory, compile with Go,
right.
If you wanted to write a binary in Go that ran ESBuild and this, that is super easy to do. So this would work very well as an ESBuild plugin. Yeah, there's not any particular reason it's not we didn't go with Rust, honestly. It was just pretty quick to hack together.
Awesome. Okay. But yeah, I guess thanks everyone for joining. Like the outpouring of people listening and talking about this is pretty amazing. We kind of did this on impromptu, but I mean, it seems to have gone pretty well. So I think we'll probably do it again. I don't know when that will be, but we're always working on cool things. So we hope to demo it. And I think maybe Fred, you had said in the future we could maybe get people in the community that want to demo their stuff too.
Yeah, I would love to make this a monthly thing. I mean, we have our showcase channel. I know we posted that every Friday. It's stuff we've been working on, kind of try to show off what we're doing. But for the whole community, I mean, there's just so much cool stuff happening around Astro right now. So I would love to open this up to anyone to present. Yeah, I think end of the month or about a month, a couple of weeks from today, we could do another one of these if there's interest. And yeah, it'd be a lot of fun.
All right, sounds great. Well, I've done the recording. We'll see how well it turned out, but assuming it works, I'll try to drop that somewhere that people can watch it. And please continue talking in the thread about this, and let's keep the conversation going.
And Nate, you said you were going to start a new channel for your compiler, so you can follow up with Nate there. Dynamic routing, I think for now is the best place to chat about that proposal, and we'll take it from there.
Perfect. Okay.
Sweet.
Thanks, everybody.
Matthew, thank you for emceeing. Appreciate it.
No problem. It's been fun. Hopefully I'll have something of my own next time. Thanks, everybody.
See y'all. Bye.
Bye.